The AV room module represents a zone where you want a user to have control of audio or video outputs. So this could be like the TV in the living room, the ceiling speakers in the kitchen, or any combination of that in one specific location. So as usual, we initialize. Again, the AV rooms have to be initialized after all of the sources have been initialized, and that's just basically for error checking purposes. You will provide the current video source as indexed into here. So if the current video source was source 105, you would provide a 3 here because that is slot 3. Same thing with the audio source here. If the room supports reporting its volume state, you'll pass that 16-bit unsigned value into the current volume slot. If the room supports reporting its current mute state, you'll pass the digital mute and unmute into here. When Josh is controlling video or audio in a room, we will supply the correct source for you to switch to, again, as indexed into here. So for the audio, if we wanted to switch to Sonos, which is source 102, we would provide a 4 here because this is slot 4. For video, if we wanted to switch to source 105, that's slot 3, we would provide a 3 out here. For volume set, assuming the room supports being directly set, we'll provide a 0 to 65535 unsigned 16-bit value for you, and you can route that appropriately. If the room only supports volume up-down, we'll either pulse up or pulse down, potentially a number of times, depending on how much the user wants to raise or lower the volume. And again, if the room supports mute, we'll do the same thing here. We'll let you know that the user wants the room muted or not muted. So provide a unique ID here. Again, unique among AV rooms. You cannot have 2 AV rooms with the same ID. If you want to combine an AV room with a regular room module, you'll have to make sure that all of this information matches on both of them. So if you wanted to have a room 101 that had lights and shades and stuff like that, it would have to be named AV room A, and it'd have to be on floor 1. I cover that more in the written documentation. You'll also select the volume type. So direct means that you provide the current state of the room, and we tell you what to set the current state of the room to. Again, that 16-bit unsigned value. Up-down means the room cannot report its current state, so we don't know what the volume is at, but we can tell the room to increase or decrease the volume. And up-down with state is sort of a hybrid. So the room can report what its current level is, cannot be set specifically to a number, can only be pulsed up or pulsed down. If we're in direct control, this is the only volume control that we use. If we're in up-down control, these are the only ones we use. If you want to modify that, feel free to edit the simple plus and recompile. And if you have a room that's a mixed mode, so some of the devices support direct, some support up-down, again, you can modify our module with no warranty provided, of course, or you can write your own volume module that basically just does a diff on the current volume from the previous volume. Mute enabled basically tells us whether or not you're going to report the mute state and you want us to be able to set the mute state. AV override is a little bit more complicated. That basically determines if we currently have an AV source selected, so both audio and video channels are set to the same thing. What happens if we request an audio only source? Obviously the audio source channel should go to the right thing. What should happen to the video? If override AV is set, the video will become 0, indicating to turn the video channel off. So a scenario for that might be users watching Roku and then they suggest music. Do you want to have the Roku keep playing in the background with no sound, or do you want to turn off the Roku? And this is covered more in the written documentation. Finally, you'll provide the unique ID of the AV sources that you've previously configured. So for this one, for example, source 101, that ties to source 101. Again, this number right here, we've marked that as a Roku. That's an AV source. And then yada yada up to the max number of sources.